King Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. That means he had more experience with women than any man who ever walked the face of this earth. And yet, this same man, who was the wisest human being God ever created, sat down and wrote serious, detailed warnings about 5 specific types of women you should avoid. Not 1, not 2, but 5. If the wisest man in history felt the need to warn every man about these women, you need to pay attention, because these women are everywhere around today. Solomon didn't write these warnings out of assumptions. He wrote them out of personal experience. But before we quickly get into the list, let's be clear. This message is not about disrespecting women. Many men have these characteristics too. The very same Solomon who warned about dangerous women also celebrated and honored the virtuous woman in Proverbs chapter 31. The first type of woman Solomon warned every man to avoid is the promiscuous woman. A promiscuous woman is a woman who has no boundaries, no restraints, and no moral compass when it comes to her sexuality. It is a woman who is willing to give herself to anybody, regardless of who it is. King Solomon described an experience in extraordinary detail in the 7th chapter of Proverbs. He says one day he was looking through his window and observed a young man who lacked understanding walking down a certain street, and a woman came out to meet him. And the Bible specifically says this woman was dressed in the attire of a harlot. That means she had the intention to lure men. But here is the most troubling part. As Solomon continued describing this encounter, he mentioned something very critical that the woman said to this young man, whom she barely knew. This woman told the young man that her husband, whom she referred to as a good man, has gone away on a long journey. That meant she was married. She had a good man at home. In fact, she herself admitted that her own husband was a good man, and yet here she was, outside at night, dressed provocatively, actively pursuing a total stranger she barely knew, ready to commit adultery the same night she encountered them. And this is what makes a promiscuous woman very dangerous. Her problem is not that she lacks a good man, or that she married the wrong man. Her problem is that she has no moral standards, no principle. She could have the best man in the world, and she would still be outside looking for someone else. That is the problem with a promiscuous woman. A promiscuous woman has no value for a good man. You can provide everything for them, give them all the attention they need, and yet they will still not be satisfied. They are driven entirely by impulse, appetite, and appetite alone. She has no barrier, no line she won't cross. Men to her are simply assets, and that is precisely why Solomon describes her as a death trap. In Proverbs chapter 7 verses 26 to 27 it says, "For she hath cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death." Look at those words carefully. He says, many strong men were brought down by her. Men of capacity, men of purpose, men who had futures and callings and potential. But they did not take the warning seriously, and they paid the price for it. Solomon's word to every man who encounters such a woman is not to reason with her or try to change her or see if you can win her over. The instruction is plain: flee and run. The second type of woman Solomon warned every man about is the flattering woman. This is a woman whose primary weapon is not her body, it's her mouth. Her words are weaponized flattery. Still studying the same woman from Proverbs chapter 7, Solomon gives us an additional layer. He says in Proverbs chapter 7 verse 21, "With her much fair speech she caused him to yield, with the flattering of her lips she forced him." And earlier in Proverbs chapter 5 verse 3 he says, "For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil." When we talk about a woman being flirtatious, we are describing a woman whose language, body, and attention are weaponized to draw emotional and romantic reactions out of men who do not belong to her. She knows exactly what to say to lower your guard, and she uses it deliberately and skillfully. In the original Hebrew language, the phrase fair speech in Proverbs chapter 7 verse 21 carries the idea of enticement through softness. It describes speech designed specifically to bypass your judgment, to make your discernment lower its defenses, so that what comes after the sweet words has an easier path to immorality. Now let's be clear, because this is important. There is nothing wrong with a woman who is warm, kind, and encouraging with her words. Solomon is not warning about genuine kindness. He is warning about flirtatious, weaponized flattery, words used as a tool of manipulation. In our generation, there are women who call every man they meet with pet names from the very first time they meet. Names like baby, king, love, and much more. They scatter these names freely, not because they genuinely feel deeply for those men, but because they have learned that sweet speech opens doors, softens resistance, and creates emotional closeness very quickly. It creates an artificial familiarity where there should be careful and wise discernment. When a woman you barely know speaks to you like she has known you all your life, don't be flattered. Be alert. Solomon warns us that the end of this woman's road is bitter. In Proverbs chapter 5, verses 4 to 5, it says, "But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell." The third type of woman Solomon warned every man to avoid is the contentious woman. This is the woman who has a lot of temper and anger issues and simply cannot live in peace. She is always arguing and always finding something to fight about, always escalating tension instead of releasing it. And Solomon was so strongly convicted about the danger of this type of woman that he mentioned her not once, not twice, but multiple times across the book of Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 21, verse 9, he says, "It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house." Think about that. He said it is better to sit on a rooftop, uncomfortable, exposed to the cold with no shelter, than to live in a spacious, beautiful house with a woman who never stops fighting. The Hebrew word translated as contentious comes from a root meaning strife and discord. This woman does not just cause conflict occasionally, she is conflict personified. Her very presence brings friction and tension into every space she enters. She fights with family, with friends, with her boss, with her neighbors, and if you are her man, she will fight with you too, and she will rarely understand why. The difficulty with this type of situation is that sometimes women like these do not start up this way. They remain very sweet at the beginning of the relationship until a ring is put on their fingers. Then their real nature begins to show. This type of woman is particularly dangerous for men who carry a divine calling, because the fulfillment of your assignment requires mental clarity, emotional stability, and spiritual focus. A contentious woman does not destroy your calling in one dramatic moment, she erodes it daily. Because your creativity can't breathe in chaos, your prayer life can't thrive in constant noise, your vision can't develop when your home environment is always a battlefield. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 1 says, "Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands." A contentious woman does not build, she demolishes every day with her own hands. The fourth type of woman Solomon warned about is the foolish woman. This type of woman makes rash decisions without thinking of the implications. In Proverbs chapter 9 verses 13 to 15, Solomon writes, "A foolish woman is clamorous, she is simple and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways." 3 words describe her with precision. She is clamorous, which means she is loud, chaotic, excessive, and always needing to be the center of attention. She is simple, which means not in the sense of humility, but in the sense of being shallow, lacking depth and wisdom. And she knoweth nothing, meaning she has no real understanding of life, of God, of consequences, of direction. She doesn't know where she is going, and she doesn't know why she's doing what she's doing. What makes this woman so spiritually dangerous is that the foolish woman almost never knows she is foolish. That is the very nature of foolishness. In Proverbs chapter 12 verse 15 it says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes." That means she is always right even when she clearly knows she is wrong, and even if she later realizes she made a mistake, her pride and ego never allow her to admit it. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 1 says again, "Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands." She is her own demolition crew. She tears down what she should be building, and she does it with her own hands. The tragedy is that she doesn't admit she is destroying it. She simply does not have the wisdom to know the difference between building and destroying. And if you are in her life, you are standing in the demolition zone. You can love someone genuinely and still recognize that they are not safe for your destiny. The fifth and most spiritually dangerous type of woman Solomon warned about is what he calls the strange woman, the woman who pulls men away from God. This type of woman operates at a level that goes far beyond the physical. This is spiritual seduction. In Proverbs chapter 2 verses 16 to 19, Solomon says, "To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go to her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life." Notice what Solomon reveals about this woman. She has forgotten the covenant of her God. She knew God at some point. She may have grown up in church. She may have been saved. She may still carry the vocabulary of faith, the language of prayer, the look of spirituality. But deep within, she has abandoned her covenant with God. And because she's still partially religious, she doesn't immediately raise red flags. She doesn't look dangerous. She might even appear anointed. This is the woman who makes you feel spiritually alive at the beginning, but slowly disconnects you from the true source of life. The relationship feels like an assignment. The conversations feel prophetic. The chemistry feels anointed. But over the months that follow, quietly and gradually, you start missing church. Your prayer life begins to dry up. Your passion for God goes lukewarm. The prophetic dreams stop coming. Your assignment loses its fire. And because the seduction was so smooth and so spiritual looking, you don't even realize that you are drifting further and further from God with every passing day. Not every spiritual connection is from God. Some connections are designed specifically to disconnect you from God. Solomon ends that passage with one of the most sobering lines in all of Scripture. "None that go to her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life." Read that again slowly. None that go to her return again. That means there is a level of spiritual damage, a level of departure from God, so deep and so complete that some men never find their way back after an encounter with this type of woman. And here is the most humbling part of this entire conversation. In 1 Kings chapter 11 verses 1 to 4 it says, "But King Solomon loved many strange women, and he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God." The very man who wrote all these warnings, the man who received unparalleled wisdom from God himself, the man who built the temple of God with his own hands, his foreign wives, his strange women, turned his heart away from the God who gave him everything. Solomon is not just warning you from Scripture, he is warning you from personal experience. Because if the wisest man alive could be brought down by the wrong woman, no man on this earth is too anointed, too educated, or too spiritually mature to be immune. So there you have it. Thank you for watching. If you love our videos, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel.